Okay, great. OC, you can let us know whenever we are good to go. Till then, we can start with some general introductions. Hello, everyone. I'm Pratyush and I will be chair for this round. I don't have any preferred gender pronouns. I would ask my panelists to kindly introduce themselves in the order listed on the tab.
Hi everyone, I'm Afif. I'll be on panel. Good luck to all teams.
Hi, I'm Iro. She, her pronouns. Thank you. All the best.
Hi everyone, Meghna here. She, her pronouns. Good luck.
Hi everyone, this is Raymond, one of the panelists. Congratulations for reaching this far. All the best.
Great. Thank you, everyone. OC, could you please screen share as well and let us know whenever we are good to go.
Hi, just give us 2 minutes and we'll just confirm in a minute.
Great, no worries. Till the time being, some general housekeeping rules. Number one, please don't speak for more than 7 minutes and 15 seconds. Anything after 7 minutes 15 seconds, don't stand on our notes. Secondly, please make this debate a bit more engaging. Since it's finals, I request all the teams to kindly engage with others through POIs. Thirdly, please follow the equity policy that you have been briefed upon in the starting of the tournament, and looking forward to a great debate. Here.
Sorry, can I confirm I'm audible and visible?
Yes, you are audible, perfectly fine.
Great.
Pranav, mate, can you hang on for just a minute?
All good. Yes, let me know.
Yeah, Pranav, you can go ahead. Thanks.
Oh, great. Can I confirm I'm audible?
Yes, you are audible and visible.
Okay. Let's see. Am I any louder now? Just want to confirm because Ariel said. Okay.
Yes, you are louder.
Awesome. Cool. POIs verbally, as I said before, I'll try and take 2 POIs. Cool. Cool. Starting my speech in 3. Wait, actually, sorry. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1, start. What are my interests? I think I probably care about ensuring a reasonable standard of life for me and my family, ensuring that we are in future family, and ensure that we live reasonably comfortable and happy lives to begin with, right? Why is this more proximate than other future concerns of helping humanity? Firstly, because humanity is often just people I cannot inherently see around in front of me, right? Often the people I see around in front of me are people close to me, and I'm going to argue that most of these people are seen as inherently, inherently like miserable in many instances. Secondly, there obviously must be a point where I am disagreeing, or a point where I think that, I necessarily am someone who doesn't like this life that I'm living, which probably indicates that one, either all of us are not being brainwashed, because clearly if we were all being brainwashed, it would be successful and me too. But two, it probably indicates that things like maybe parents perhaps told me that the mission in some instances is pointless. I'm often constantly feeling stressful because of me being a maintenance guy. It could be, it could be because, for example, I'm gay or asexual and think that's something that having sex for the purpose of reproduction or having sex with a female is something that's I find inherently problematic. Of course, this could be a minority, but the point is there are a variety of reasons as to how I probably think that I do not always like this. What then are we going to argue? Firstly, I think people often have a very difficult life over here, okay, because of this specific thinking in the future. Firstly, you always think that you are tools that are being used to do something in the future and that you do not have an inherent right to happiness to begin with. But secondly, people around you are often likely to have doubts in and of themselves, right? Firstly, because the life that they have is inherently miserable. Why is this the case? Because of this, okay, clarification.
Cool. People are going to be people regardless in terms of being gay, yada, yada, yada. Go ahead and tell us this is not an actor motion in a THW motion, why it's going to be an obligation or a choice, any standard.
No. Okay. You need to know motion. No. Sure. You need to know motion burdens. It's THW, but it says you in the info stack. This is an actor debate. Sorry. Okay. All right. So people have a very difficult life around you, right? They have an inherently miserable life, and you do too for a few reasons. Firstly, often because you are designed to fulfill your role at the bare minimum resources and that sort of stuff. What does this mean? You're always going to be doing work. Firstly, because you have a very small skeleton crew that to constantly take care of this. Secondly, a very minimal resources with which to work with, especially if this is a couple of generations after humanity's already exploded. Thirdly, the stakes are very high because any small thing that can easily disrupt the entire mission, right? It can mean that, if any part sort of breaks down, if someone presses the wrong button, if someone mistakenly redirects you, all of those sorts of things can constantly stop you. Hence, you constantly need to be working and checking up on this. Secondly, you always face massive amounts of overwhelming pressure, right? Because you're always feeling that I have to do this. I have to ensure for the sake of, I always have to, you feel that you always feel that, that anytime I'm constantly doing this, there's always a risk that I'm facing or harming humanity. At the point where I make the mental cognitive shift that, this is something that I don't care about as much. I care about enjoying my life now. I think this overwhelming pressure reduces a lot less. But thirdly, on their side, as they often inherently fantasize about a future that I can never see, they're constantly wondering what somebody 10 generations down will actually do within a future habitable planet, but I will never experience it myself, which means one, I experience crippling months of depression, but two, I experience crippling months of depression on behalf of future generations, like my own children who are very, very proximate to me. What does this mean? I think this means that, first of all, people around you are likely having these kinds of doubts yourselves, especially at the point where you could be the tipping point in ensuring that there's reproduction or not. That probably indicates that these people themselves are often having some of these doubts. But these people themselves are often your close friends because it's an inherently small skeleton crew, which means they often are inherently empathetic or understanding of what the situation you're going through, often inherently appreciate this. What does this mean? I think this means that either they're going to force you to have kids, which I don't think is the debate, because then the debate is irrelevant, presumably you have some sort of choice and consent, or they're going to have to accept what you're done. What does this then allow you to do? Firstly, use the good resources in order to do good stuff, i.e. you get to live life a lot better because you don't have to rely on the minimum amount of resources in order to survive. Things like, ensuring you're eating the littlest amount of food so that there's food available in the future, ensuring you're not using up the minimal amount of energy and that sort of stuff, right? Instead, you can eat food well, you could say play a lot more video games, do a lot more stuff that uses up a lot more energy. Secondly, this often means you can form far more meaningful relations because you don't even care as much about maintenance to such a degree, right? Because when there are so many tiny reasons the ship might fail, you always are fearing that your own job is not fulfilled at the point where I'm constantly, not working on these continuously, but also where other people around me are not doing this continuously. At the point where I make the mental shift and say, I'm not going to have children because I don't care as much about this mission, I think I'm not going to indulge in maintenance to extent. I think it form a far more meaningful relationship during the time that I specifically am living, right? But thirdly, right, I think life is just far more purposeful as a result around people around me, because I think people around me then, once they themselves start to see the mental barrier I've overcome, they themselves are likely to think that this is something that is generally valuable. This is a person who's actually kind of a hero, who's actually helped us understand this is the way your life can actually be, and there's a way we can actually live that life in a more meaningful way that doesn't always require us to be seen as being put as tools for the future, and tools to such an extent, right? Like literally my life doesn't matter beyond the fact that it is available to ensure that people's future lives are literally there, and 5 generations down the line that's actually going to happen. Okay, why does it mean that the child, okay, why do you not want to necessarily have a child? Before this, yeah, sure, PY.
It's the fact that you literally have a life in and of itself in this situation is a privilege. How does the actor deal with the guilt shedding of that?
No. Look, the point is the guilt of being the only person now is less proximate because one, I already inherently have doubts because there's a real preference by the motion. But two, obviously, like the privilege is cutting both ways. At the point where my child is going to lead an incredibly miserable life, at the point where 3 generations down is going to be an incredibly miserable life, that's also going to be problematic. But 3, it's not very clear as to whether this is happening 1 or 2 generations after the Earth has already exploded. Meaning, I probably do not know very many people on Earth before that Earth necessarily exploded. The implication is the only people I know, the only life I lead is the life that I see around me, which means I have a cognitive bias in thinking that what's more important is what are the lives of people around me. So I only know preemptively that this is the kind of life that is considered normal. Okay, what does it mean? Why do you not want to have a child? No, thank you. It's first of all, it's very difficult to take care of that child on incredibly minimal resources. Secondly, those specific, so obviously like the small family units are likely to be good friends among each other, which often means that when you don't have, like if you like have those children in the future, they're often going to be indulging in massive amounts of maintenance work. They're often going to be far more miserable with crippling amounts of depression, and often they themselves are going to be used as tools in the future for their own grandchildren. You probably don't like that. Thirdly, you probably don't want to consign your own child to situation, right? Because you want to ensure that life lived is not miserable for your own future, and thus you feel a far more proximate concern of guilt when you consign your future generations to the same miserable life that you yourself have led, as opposed to on their side of the house. Next, I think what this then ensures is the life of the child is not specifically seen as much more miserable. But secondly, I think you often are disproportionately like to be a woman, because at the point where you consent to not having the child, you probably are someone who themselves is someone who could have had the child. At the point where you're a woman, you will likely see your life be seen as far, far worse in a world on their world, because you're likely to be seen as valuable explicitly and immediately in order to give birth to children, in order to ensure that the life that they're specifically leading is something that is very bad. In order to ensure that you are seen as a tool. The implication is there's far more sexism with their side of the house. On our side, when you and all people around you view, or most people around you at least view, that your life is meaningful for the way you're living it now, as opposed to for the purpose of being a baby manufacturing machine for 10 generations, I think a far more likely to see a great amount of happiness. But finally, I don't think it's debated about the amount of success, right? I want to know 2 things about success. Firstly, your capacity to repopulate. If you're the tipping point, if you're the only way to achieve success, the problem means that you're a very small crew, which means the only way you can do it is via things like incest. Firstly, this means that the gene pool gets inherently messed up because 5 generations down, very few people, if you live, you probably may die anyways from birth defects and that sort of stuff. But secondly, it's very incredibly uncertain how these future successes like to be, because one, you often do not know the planet. 2, you do not know how accurate the information that was put into your thing was 2 generations ago. But 3, any small little thing can actually disrupt it. Far better to feel liberation mentally when you accept that this is what your life is and this is the important part of life, and that you choose to live it to its fullest extent and ensure you don't get the guilt of harming a child in the future. Very happy to propose.
I thank the speaker for your great speech. Now I would like to welcome the leader of opposition to open the case for who. Here.
Wonderful. I assume I'm clearly audible, but if at any point I'm not, just mention it out in the chat or audio. POIs, I would love one each from opening government and closing government. I'll actively ask for them. Please feel free to put them out in the chat as well. I will, however, like to take a POI each from both teams. Of course, trigger warning for my speech, 2 things. 1, if I'm ever mean, I love all of you in this room. I met most of you, but it's a part of the debate. 2, I might be talking about things that are existential in nature and about human values, potentially engaging on topics like depression, because it was talked about in this debate and seems to be a theme. Cool. I think that takes care of just about everything. I will, of course, give a countdown right before I start. And not to be cheesy or corny, but just a couple of words if I actually start. This is the first time as a speaker I've ever made it to finals. So it's a big deal for me. Thank you so much for this entire tournament, the OC, the judges. It's a lovely time being here. And hopefully we'll have an awesome, fun round and maybe chill with everyone later on. Thank you so much. And of course, Aradome as well. I forgot to mention Aradome. Kind of awkward. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to be giving my speech in a few. Just give me a moment to compose myself. And then, of course, I will give you a countdown. Yeah, just setting up my timer. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panel, suffice it to say that we are in a unique position in history of humankind pertaining to this motion. Fundamentally, humankind has special treatment for those who are special. What this means, and it's not just a reference to equality, as a foundation of human organization, community building and interaction, looks like tribe leaders getting specific perks, warriors getting specific perks or obligations, healers and doctors getting specific perks and obligations. What this means is, based on your obligations that you owe to society in a framework, and we'll of course elaborate this in argument specifically, you owe something to society. That's going to be our primary push in our case. We prefer a world where you stick to this and you go ahead and don't abdicate these things. Simple things on burdens. I'll also talk about things on framing. Extraneous rebuttals, very few. Most of it is going to be integrated. Burdens. Side government have to tell you why people ought to refrain en masse. This is not an actor debate. I will talk more about this in the framing, but the burden is that they have to say that specific actors that fit this demographic or the barrier that is mentioned in the context slide ought to refrain. This should take away a lot of their arguments about outliers like, hey, if you're a woman, hey, if you're gay, hey, what if it's incest because the gene pool is so small, hey, you're not going to disappear simply because one person stops having kids. None of these arguments matter because this is talking about whether or not a decision should be made in this situation by anybody or literally everybody that fits that bracket demographic. Let's not slime the debate. Second burden on side government is talk about why is it okay for them or even a single agent to forsake the mission to avoid harms. We'll talk more about these nature of harms to the personal. We'll be charitable to side government. Of course, they have a case, but what are the burdens on side opposition? One, you have the obligation of pushing humanity forward uniquely because of the position you're in. Two, preserving the mission, fairly simple. What's the case line on side government? And just fairly line is going to be a like actors' priorities because, hey, I'm depressed, I don't want to deal with a kid, or my life is hectic enough as it is. You deal with burden shifting. It sounds sanctimonious and holier than thou that, hey, I'm doing it because I want to take care of my kids. I don't want them to have depression. But it ultimately betrays everything they stand for as a position, not only them as an individual, what they owe to humanity, what they owe to their crew, literally their identity. Second, on side opposition, we primarily give you three things. One, you owe an obligation to the future generation. Two, you owe humanity the mission and completing this mission diligently. Third, there is a sense of community on the ship. And that's why a quality of life is not just going to be randomly shit, even if you're living on the ship, not debating the ultimate promise of utopia that exists in the planet. Points of framing, I have 4. I'll take a POI before that. OG, shoot.
To be clear, it says
So-
you... Yeah, clarification. To be clear, it says you belong to a middle generation. Are you arguing the actor is the middle generation?
Dude, okay, I'll answer this with my first point of framing because this is literally my first point of framing, so don't worry about it. My first point of framing, agency. Agency is going to exist on either side, right? Which is to say, people are still going to be able to choose on either side. We're not telling people you have to force them to choose, nor is it an actor motion where you are making the choice. This is talking about whether or not one should choose. Therefore, it talks about this demographic and anyone fitting this demographic and what decision they should make. That is what the debate is. Perhaps after the debate, we could quibble and squabble about what debate means in like a BP motion context. But this is not an actor motion. This is a THW motion for a certain demographic, fairly common as to a certain demographic, like this house is a feminist movement. No, this house will do this. Therefore, this house being the specific demographic en masse. Second point of framing, existence. The promise of a good future still exists. And this is just to prevent any sliming that could potentially happen further in the debate because, hey, you can never trust the closing side with their extensions. No, like I'm just kidding. Anyway, existence, promise of a good future. It's likely to be scientifically engineered and have a good planet that you're going to, which is not at the brink of, say, climate change or not at the brink of being screwed up, reasonably scientifically oriented. None of this crap that, hey, even in your best case scenario, you're leading kids to a shitty life. No. Host planet, optimally selected, likely to be true. Third point of framing, life on the ship. There's still going to be a significant amount of the people, and this still eliminates things like incest and gene pool and things like that, because, hey, that's slightly absurd, slightly on the fiat, slightly uncomparative, but that's not harms that we have to contend with in the debate. We're only talking about the decision. Life on the ship, you're still going to have interpersonal dynamic and a sense of community. And specifically, the sense of community is going to be oriented by leftovers of humanity, which is literally all that is left of humanity, have that sense of bonding because of this shared trauma of lived experience. Things like that and events like that change people's lives and their orientation forever. Everyone is likely to engage in a sense of community at the very least. We're not saying there's never going to be any interpersonal problems or people won't be mad at each other. Hey, but there is a sense of community. You still have to debate on that comparative. Fourth point of framing, common human ancestry, which is to say there are still going to be things like stories, which are anecdotal talk passed from generation to generation, even if you were born on the ship and never seen Earth. There are still going to be relics left over from actual Earth. This could be a baseball or football left on the ship. There's still going to be information and history through actual history, things like movies, things like stories. and things like, I don't know, sporting activities that you can do on the ship and all of this that you have on the ship, which is to say that indicate common human ancestry, art, culture, yada, yada, yada. Simple example of this, it's sort of obvious that humanity, while sending this mission, has always fantasized about sending their culture. True, by think of like the Voyager experiment, you send a time capsule with all of human culture. It's fairly intuitive they would do that if you would probably sending literal humanity out to another planet. Before I move on, I'll take a POI from CG if they have one, please. CG doesn't seem to have one. I'll take another from OG. Quick.
Why couldn't we automate all this maintenance? Why do they need to put humans in charge of it?
Dude, if we could automate this maintenance on our side, we'd do it too. Obviously, probably technology hasn't developed. Once again, we're talking about the debate and the comparative. Hold on to that. We're talking about specifically, even if a lot of your life around like revolves around running the ship, that doesn't mean you'll have absolutely no pastime. That doesn't mean you'll have absolutely no interpersonal relations. And simply the more people to do it, the easier it'll probably get, even if workload probably increases. Come on. Cool. I'll move on to my one constructive. The rest of our case will probably come through from Aradome, but I've flagged it already in terms of what our impact on our cases. One, obligation. Obligations owed to society specific to a specific position. Simple example, doctors, politicians, you tax the rich more than you tax others. It is a function of society how you have ended up. Somehow, your framework of rights, vital integration that is aggregated before your time. Your very existence is owed to society, to potentially your parents. Your parents' existence is owed all because of this sense of cohabitation, because otherwise it'd just be anarchy, people killing each other and doing whatever the fuck they want. Therefore, on the premise of a community, owe specific obligations to the community. Our simple understanding here is, if you are literally the last of humanity, with the narrative, of course, of poised, repopulate humanity and take care and make sure humanity goes forward and retains.
I thank the speaker for the great speech. Now calling upon the DPM to continue case for opening government. Here.
Hello. 1 second.
Yes, clearly audible and visible.
Yeah, sorry, I was just moving. Okay. I'd also like to make a statement before I start. Very happy to be in a finals with Aradome because this is the guy who is the reason I got to my first finals. So excited to be here. But yeah, so I can only take POIs by voice. I can only take POIs by voice. I can't take it by text. I am begging Aradome, like in the name of God, I know you're gonna DLO dump. So for the love of God, ask me a POI about what you're gonna run. Also, shout out to Audrey and Rita who tied in semis. Respect to them. So please, ask me one POI and give me a case so that, like, your DLO case, so that I can actually respond to it for a fair debate. Other than that, I'll try to take CO as well because engagement. Okay. Starting. It was a last-ditch attempt. They could only make one ship instead of multiple. They couldn't have supported more than you. It's probably a last-ditch attempt that was suddenly quickly assembled, which means the maintenance is every part of your life, every day. This looks like 18 hours of work, 6 hours of sleep. Let's be really, really charitable and say no. This looks more like 12 to 14 hours of work. Realistically, this is how much it looks like, right? Because you probably still need to put huge amounts of